My world suddenly fell apart with a single phone call 3 days before Christmas in 2022. When Denver streets glistened in the snow and gentle jazz versions of holiday favorites floated from passing automobiles. I had just moved into my apartment, a one-bedroom flat close to Capitol Hill. I'm worn out from working 2 shifts at the neighborhood clinic. My breath was still hazy from the cold wind, and my fingers were numb. I sighed as I saw the little bag beside the door, kicked off my boots and took off my navy scrubs. A pine green scarf had already been packed and folded on top, and a few thoughtfully wrapped presents, each with purpose and thought, waited quietly next to it like silent sacrifices. The nutmeg had come back to me. I would even find the precise toffee that my aunt used to swear by. I had done everything correctly once more in the hopes that I would be sufficient this year. My older brother, I said automatically as my phone buzzed and Julian appeared on the screen. Hey Jules. His voice was cautious rather than kind. Hey Lena. Just letting you know. This year Marina is coming to Christmas, I said, pausing. When I revealed that I worked in palliative care, his new girlfriend, who also performed sound healing, once saged the living room. Emotional alignment is very important to her, he added. Additionally, she finds the energy you bring from the clinic to be somewhat overwhelming. So we thought you might want to take a break this year. I take it you understand? Nothing private. I gazed at my thrift store tree's twinkling lights as they abruptly went off. Nothing private. My mother called before I could answer. Her voice was steel with a honey coating. We just want peace, darling. Marina is sensitive, as you are aware. It might be embarrassing if you show up. To be honest, we might not open the door if you arrive. Rejection given with a bout. No sugar-coated omissions, no falsehoods. I didn't scream or weep. I didn't plead for inclusion. Standing there with my phone in hand, I gazed at the small presents I had wrapped with shaky optimism for those who had never made room for me. People who only became aware of my absence when it caused them discomfort. And for the first time this year, I let that stillness do the talking. Like someone folding up the last chairs after an imaginary funeral, I proceeded slowly and deliberately. I went to my bank account and opened my laptop. My parents' past due property tax was not covered by the automatic transfer. Julian's startup fund's silent monthly deposit was frozen. Last year, the auto insurance policy I co-signed for Dad expired. I was just finished, not angry. I had long thought that I would be granted a place at the table provided I contributed enough, remained helpful enough, and continued to show up with composure and casseroles. Not only on a bodily, emotional, or spiritual level. I believed that my dependability made me invaluable. But the reality lay like snow in that cozy calm, surrounded by the steady hum of my old radiator and the aroma of cinnamon. No one ever celebrated me. I was just given permission until I wasn't. The first flakes fell outside my window, sure and gentle, smothering the city in a white silence. As I gazed through the glass, I experienced an unexpected sensation. Relief. No more trying to blend in. Asking, cowering, and tiptoeing are over. No more pleading for admission. I wouldn't be the stranger with her face against the window this Christmas. I wouldn't be considered quite sufficient. Only when something needed to be fixed did they remember. I thought this was typical. How certain children received softness and attention while others were supposed to serve as furniture. Steady, encouraging, and quiet. I was the oldest. The practice run, as my father used to say during barbecues. The test child, the one who needed to prove their worth in order to gain affection. Julian, who was 5 years younger, was the dreamer, the charmer, and the miracle baby. It was ambition when he forewent rent to finance his band's 3rd album effort. I was going overboard once more when I took an extra shift at the hospital. I recalled his 15-year-old self spray painting abstract shapes on the garage wall. It was dubbed passion art by my parents. They chuckled. 2 days later, I received a lecture on negligence after dropping a casserole dish. I completed an FAFSA application in high school and placed it on the counter for my mother to sign. I even pointed out the instances in which she never inquired about it. I carried home my acceptance to medical school like a prize. After giving it a quick glance, she mumbled, "That's intense. Just don't lose yourself in it." She then resumed her celery chopping. They also threw a welcome-back supper with wine and candles when Julian left school for the 3rd time to start a therapeutic podcast. A framed picture of Julian holding a paintbrush was still hanging in the front hallway like a holy artifact, along with balloons and cake. The house that had never hosted a graduation celebration for me seemed to be brimming with enthusiasm for the son who had been unemployed for years. In the recycling bin behind takeaway menus and outdated coupons, I once discovered one of my old sketchbooks, half filled with doodles from hospital breaks, scrawled scenes of Denver sunsets, and patients' hands mid-recovery. When I inquired about, they stated they believed it to be junk paper, shrugged and laughed. Perhaps it was for them. Perhaps I was too. Despite everything, including medical school, residency, and the graveyard hours that took place in secluded rooms where most doctors didn't hang out, I continued to turn up. Rooms full with faded pictures, fleeting regrets, and the pain of abandonment. I picked geriatrics for this reason. In those long-forgotten places, I recognized myself. People who had given their all but were now only acknowledged when something went wrong. My role at home never changed. I was the one who remained composed, the one who helped, the unseen hand that prevented the cracks from getting worse. I paid for it discreetly after the insurance rejected my claim when the roof began to leak following a snowfall. I made a question-free money transfer when Julian's freelancing job dried up once more. Because I loved them or because I still thought that love was a transactional thing that you had to earn through sacrifice, I called, planned, covered, and coordinated when my mom's hip started locking again and her physical therapist stopped visiting because she had missed payments. They never expressed gratitude. They were not obliged to. Love wasn't a verb in their culture. Like gravity or the light of day, it was presumed and expected. Additionally, each time I gave them a part of myself, they took it. Blindly, yet not maliciously. I never once asked how much it cost. I believed it to be the definition of family for years. Being invisible but vital, like scaffolding, but never the main attraction. However, something inside of me exploded that night after I received the calls informing me that I was not welcome at Christmas. I came to understand that scaffolding shouldn't bleed for the structure it supports. I had had enough of my existence being reduced to make theirs more pleasant. Please remember to subscribe if this story even slightly touches you. There will be more. And believe me, everything changes in the next section. I purchased Julian's ticket again when he couldn't afford his Thanksgiving flight home, and rashly purchased a new set of vintage lenses for his documentary project. It was forgotten by the next week after he gave me a hug at the gate and referred to me as the universe's best sister. Another courtesy that I was never supposed to acknowledge, slipped neatly into the invisible ledger. Nobody needed to inquire. Like a ghost operating in the background of their lives, I was always one step ahead of them. Silently fixing, covering, and smoothing. Never seen but constantly required. They never express gratitude. Perhaps because being grateful makes it more difficult to continuously rely on someone without taking a break. It was simpler that way, I told myself. Being grateful made you visible, and things that are visible can be rejected or evaluated. Therefore, I vanished behind the concealed beam that hasn't broken yet. The drywall of their comfort. After working 12-hour shifts at the hospital, I would occasionally sip peppermint tea by the window and ponder what it would be like to just be noticed. Not for something I could fix, afford, or keep together. Just viewed as Lena, not as scaffolding or a contingency plan. However, those were wishes and luxury ideas. Wishes weren't for gals with heating bills and tax software, but for golden boys with sketchbooks. So I continued. Every Christmas I brought them their favorite bread pudding, and they always grinned when they asked who prepared it, as if it had appeared out of thin air. I silently sent money when Julian's rent wasn't paid. I stayed on the phone beyond midnight, helping my parents navigate their W-2s line by line when they called. I told myself that love meant being there, being stable, and finding a solution to everything while my own taxes sat in a tidy, unread pile next to the refrigerator. That if I was heavy enough, someone would eventually turn around and notice me beneath it. I knew better, though, as I stood there in my small kitchen with the phone still warm from the call that had exiled me from Christmas because it was too much. They refused to notice me. I had never asked them to, not because they didn't care. I'd taught them not to do so. With cinnamon hanging in the air and snow falling outside my window like forgiveness, I picked up my phone that night. Not to make a call, not to plead. I launched the banking app. I hit cancel quietly. Gone was the $8,000 I had been providing them every month to pay off their mortgage. Savings for emergencies are locked. No more unplanned repairs. No more rescues in the middle of the night. Next winter, Julian's automobile battery will be dead. That would be his issue. It was robotic at first. Only a few of taps. Stop the automatic transfer. Authorization of the final payment. Freeze joint access, such as when I pay my rent or brush my teeth. Typical. However, a peculiar silence unfolded within me with each click. Not bitterness, not numbness. It was liberating. A bird with timid dry wings is stretching inside of me. I opened my notepad and made a list after realizing that the cage door had been left open the entire time. Not to feel bad about myself, but to realize all the silent debts I had silently accepted. The trips, the unexpected surgeries, the return checks, the wrecked automobiles, and the numerous crises I had handled behind the scenes without acknowledgement or fanfare. The weight of finally seeing my own tiredness caused the ink to blur, not tears. Regardless of how they would subsequently spin it, I wasn't angry. Lena is being aloof. Lena never stops being intense. No, I wasn't upset. Being invisible for a long time has the drawback that people only notice you when you're not around. When objects fall. It wouldn't hurt until the last notice arrived for the overdue mortgage payment. Until the pipes burst again in January, the cancelled maintenance fund would be meaningless. Even now, Julian's gigs would fluctuate like the tides. But there was no net underneath him this time. No silent sister using bank wires and love to tie everything together. I didn't announce anything. No big exit. No mysterious posts on Facebook. The only person who still mailed birthday cards in cursive, Aunt Ramona, was unaware of it. I just unplugged the Christmas message I had partially written, which wished everyone warmth and love. I removed it. I had placed a small tree in the corner. I disconnected its lights. I placed the presents I had meticulously and neatly wrapped into the hall closet. Their glittering paper seemed absurd in light of my choice. I refrained from crying. There was only clarity, no space for sorrow. It shouldn't feel like love is an unpaid work. Family shouldn't feel like an expensive membership. I had worked for decades to obtain what ought to have been provided to me without charge. However, usefulness is not belonging, and quiet is not love. They laughed without me in a residence across town that was noisy and lit up. And I allowed them for the first time. I allowed them to use the illusion they had cultivated for years as the foundation for their celebration. The one in which I was the issue. The one where people thought I was being bitter because I didn't say anything. I blamed my remoteness because I was the one who was heavy, difficult, and never quite fit in with their carefully planned vacations. I was absent for the first time. And in doing so, I got back something I didn't even realize I had given up. When Christmas morning finally arrived, it was gloomy and gentle, with snow sticking to the roofs like frosting, and the Denver cityscape shrouded in fog. The quiet within was mirrored by the quiet outside. Wrapped in my favorite blanket, which had a subtle scent of comfort and rosemary, I sat near the window. Cradled in my hands was a warm mug of cinnamon apple tea, the steam rising like recollection. The tree wasn't lit by me. The holiday playlist was meticulously curated, but I didn't hit play. I used to fill in the blanks. I did not make a call. I didn't send a text. I was just silent and motionless. In the corner, unopened, were the gifts I had wrapped. Vibrant, upbeat, and somewhat unsophisticated. They now appeared alien, as though they belonged to someone who still thought that hard work was a prerequisite for acceptance. But that morning there was no sorrow. Just silence, no pain, no tears. Holy purifying silence, like to the air after a storm or the breath after a prolonged scream. It wasn't until it disappeared that I understood how much noise I had been carrying. That day, time moved in a new way. Like a whisper, noon came and went. No background noise from my parents' kitchen, no calls. Julian and Marina did not post joyous selfies with hashtags. There will be no Venmo demands for unforeseen holiday costs. Just quiet. It wasn't until dark arrived and the sky turned a bruised purple that I felt the need to stop it. 3 times in all, my phone buzzed once and then again. I initially disregarded it. Most likely a workgroup topic that I had neglected to silence. The screen was then illuminated by a message. Can you answer, Ramona? You've already caused enough harm. I went cold. Injury? I hadn't even visited the place. My phone rang. Once more her name flashed. My voice sounded scratchy from lack of use. What took place? She spoke softly, like if she were speaking to a damaged object. She whispered softly. They're saying you ruined Christmas. But you weren't even there, Lena. Like ice, the word struck. I blinked. How can you ruin an event to which you were not invited? After hesitating, she started to explain in bits and parts. After dinner, Marina apparently started looking at the family pictures on the mantel while sipping a glass of wine. One picture, a fading, slightly crooked portrait from a long-ago birthday celebration, had caused her to stop. I was maybe 11 or 12. I was in the middle of laughing while wearing a large maroon sweater, with one sleeve almost engulfing my hand. Marina squinted and angled her head before saying it loudly enough for everyone in the living room to hear. Isn't that Dr. Lena Morgan? Slowly, Aunt Ramona nodded. It was she who spent the night sitting with my neighbor. Saved her life. Really? The atmosphere changed. As if someone had flipped a switch, the laughter stopped. Forks were in the air. The clinking of glasses ceased. Julian turned pale. My mom's smile went cold. Wait, Lena's your sister, the one you talk about? Marina questioned, looking from face to face. No one immediately responded, but whatever half-truth or evasive remark followed was sufficient. Marina collected her belongings, thanked everyone with a courtesy that could break glass, and left. Suddenly the wave had started by the time Aunt Ramona contacted me. Something had been posted by Marina. Just being honest, nothing explosive. A few scathing remarks regarding how families alter individuals to make them fit into more appealing narratives. About the way that silence acts as an eraser. Concerning the harm done to rooms filled with happy pictures of individuals you act as though don't exist. I was unaware of the precise phrasing. I didn't have to. I had a vivid mental image of it. The curated image crashed. Reading between the lines are the family friends. New York's art circles are small and gossipy. The covert disintegration of a charming and exclusive brand. And for the first time someone else had taken notice, not someone who had grown up with it, not someone who had been taught to perceive harshness as love, someone who had seen me as a person, a doctor, a sister, a presence, and not a burden. I discovered something more potent than any retort that evening while I sat by myself in the silence of my flat. The stillness you leave behind can sometimes reveal the most incisive truth. It started the day after Christmas. Hopelessness seeping through polished fissures. Let's reset things, the email's title said. It resembled a business memo. Polished, bland, and empty. Julian, my father, and my mother all signed it together. As if decades of division could be erased by unity. Just talking about heightened emotions, holiday stress, and appreciating family without offering a true apology. Halfway down, I discovered the actual request. Could I get in touch with Marina, make things clear, and make things better? It was because Julian's painting career was in jeopardy, not because they missed me or because they now understood. It has nothing to do with me. I had never been the focus. Only the chaos that had been left by my absence. They were forced to face a mirror. They missed me, which is why they hadn't contacted me. They had just come to the realization that they could no longer afford the price of deleting me. I didn't respond. My phone buzzed once more that night as snow spoke on my windows. It wasn't family this time. It was the administrator of the hospital. I had only met David Reynolds once at a charity gala. Firm handshake, kind eyes. His voice was tentative. My blood turned to ice. Not the numbing kind, but the hardening kind, as he started. Lena, this is a little awkward, but I got a call from your father. He cleared his throat, saying he's worried about your emotional well-being. That perhaps you've been under stress lately and might need some time off. My father, who used to laugh that I was too intense for my own good, was now using that very trait to paint me as unstable. He didn't believe it, but he thought it would control me, shake me, and scare me into silence, but it didn't work. David saw through it, said as much. A sharp, weaponizing concern. The message was clear, though. They weren't looking for reconciliation. Instead, they were looking for leverage, and that didn't work. The next step was a carefully planned smear campaign that included group texts and whispers to distant aunts and cousins. Lena is simply going through a difficult moment, is isolating herself, and is feeling overwhelmed. A cousin I hadn't spoken to since Julian's first art show suddenly messaged me, saying, "Hey love, if you ever need a yoga retreat, I've got a discount code." Overwhelmed the awake. Every skillfully executed manipulation, every betrayal wrapped in performative care only made me more acutely aware. There was no mention of Christmas or exclusion. I was done smoothing their story. and the snow outside continued to fall slowly, erasing the footprints of every path I'd taken to make myself smaller for them. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting their story, the one in which Julian was the family's gifted heart and I was the quiet utility who never made waves. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to correct the record or defend myself or you. However, it didn't end there. It never does, not with people who think they have the right to silence you. Next, my mother's voice came softly outside my door on a quiet Sunday in the middle of January, when the windows were being pressed against by the bone-deep winter cold as if it were breathing. I heard a gentle knock as I was charting patient notes at my desk with a mug of tea left next to me. I remained motionless, listening to my steady heartbeat, and then I got up and went to the door to look through the peephole. There they were, my mother, father, and Julian, bundled in coats, their smiles stretched thin, a picture-perfect apology framed in desperation. I refused to open the door. Not yet. My mother spoke first. I opened the door an inch, just enough to let the cold slip through the crack and sting my skin, not enough to invite them in. I felt no fear, only a detached, aching sadness, the kind you get when you finally realize the rescue ship you've been watching for years is just another mirage on the horizon. "We just want to talk," she murmured, clutching her bag as if it contained all the appropriate words, her voice smooth, practiced, and laced with something supposed to seem maternal. I didn't move. I didn't grin. I finally saw it clearly, so I didn't soften. They didn't support me. For the previous iteration of myself, they were present. The one who still thought one had to earn love. The girl who progressively shrank in order to fit into the limited areas they provided. This was no longer the residence of the girl. A brittle, harsh silence grew between us. I saw my father's jaw move and his eyes light up with annoyance. Julian shuffled around as if his sneakers could lift him off the porch completely. They didn't feel comfortable. I gave them the one word that was important after a moment. No. No explanations, no speeches, no bridges made from my own broken pieces. Simply put, no. My mom's expression broke. Half bewilderment, half incredulity, as though she couldn't believe that the sturdy framework she had relied upon for decades had finally fallen apart voluntarily. Silently, I shut the door. Just a boundary, not a blast or a declaration. With calm hands, I adored it. I could hear muffled voices rising and falling outside. Sharper at first, then plaintive, with a hint of the annoyance of those who aren't accustomed to being turned away. I didn't listen, though. I returned to my desk, took a seat, and encircled my mug of cold tea with my fingers while allowing the silence to envelop me like a precious object. The framed letter from Marina, with its slightly smudged ink and her calligraphy pressed with care and meaning, was on the shelf next to me. For the first time, I felt weightless as I gazed at it. I reflected on all the years I had spent trying to become a daughter they could be proud of, how I had taken their neglect, their shame, and their quiet and used it as motivation to keep coming up. I was never created to be a mirror, to take in their disappointment or to reflect their pride. Something else was present, and perhaps that was sufficient in the end. They did not immediately depart. I heard voices whispering, shoes shuffling, and the edges of despair curling. Then there was a quieter knock. "Please, Lena. All we want to do is chat." I remained seated. I was anchored by Marina's framed letter. My tea is bitter, chilly, and yet comforting. I let the knocking to continue until it became softer before ceasing. The silence returned. This time it's full, not hollow. I actually understood for the first time. Reopening the door is not necessarily a need for forgiveness. Sometimes that means not doing it. Sometimes that means standing strong while the individuals who broke you fight to the end, until you have the strength to erect a wall of self-worth rather than resentment. Perhaps minutes went by. Then came the cautious hum of the motor, the dull clunk of automobile doors, and the shuffle of departing footsteps. They had vanished. Denied, not chattered. Pulling aside the curtain just enough to see the tail lights disappearing into the snow-covered street, I stood and walked carefully to the window. I didn't recoil. I refrained from picking up my phone. I had no desire to chase after them. No desperate wish to mend the damage their silence had caused. Just peace. True tranquility. When you eventually stop pleading for a place at a table that was never set for you. It's the kind that resides deep within your chest. Turned away from the window. It was getting warmer in my flat. Just mine, neither brighter nor louder. The The Christmas tree remained in the corner, with its ornaments unaltered and its lights disconnected. The wrapped presents were still there, but they were no longer signs of rejection, so it didn't appear dejected. They served as prompts. I had made an attempt. I was in love. With open arms, I had offered the best aspects of myself. They simply didn't see it. This time I brought a stronger cup of tea. I pulled the blanket tighter across my shoulders and went back to my work, letting the steam rise around my face. The afternoon light fell on Marina's letter. You had an impact. She had written. You persisted. You gave her a sense of importance. I touched the frame with my fingers. Sturdy, flawed, and wooden. My skin felt silky against the cool glass. Unshakable and real. Someone else, someone honest, someone watching, will see your value even if your family doesn't. All the years I'd spent folding myself to fit came to mind. I at last understood that I was never intended to be smaller. Up or anybody, not for them. It hadn't been unkind to close the door. Clarity was the key. It wasn't because they loved me that they had come. They needed control, which is why they arrived. The quiet, reliable me that was no longer there. However, that girl was no longer there. She was replaced with a woman who at last understood. Your silence is not necessary for love. It never asks you to break in order to keep someone else whole, and it never demands your sacrifice. I watched the snow fall while relaxing and sipping my tea. Silent, gentle, purifying, and I knew that I had rescued myself this time. I was free, perhaps for the first time. Like deep breaths after a storm, the days went by slowly and sweetly. There was no longer a sense of loneliness in the silence. I had never been able to claim that area before, but it felt like it. I returned to my job. I went around the medical facility. I sat among patients whose relatives arrived with cards and flowers, as well as those whose rooms were silent except for the sound of the machines and my presence. I paid attention. I remained. I completed the important work. The kind that keeps lives together even though it doesn't make for glossy photo albums or trend online. Then a little gift showed up one afternoon. Just my name, neatly slanted, penned on the brown paper with no return address. I cautiously opened it. There was heavy ivory stationery inside. The edges of the ink were a little smeared. Marina sent it. Her grandmother was the subject of her writing. How she continued to stroll to the farmer's market every Saturday and do yoga twice a week. She vividly recalled the times when everyone had subtly begun to give up on her, and how one doctor had remained, staying after visiting hours, and treating her like a person rather than a patient, a woman who was still capable of joy and deserving of respect. She wrote, "You didn't just save her life. You told her that she was still alive." After reading the letter 3 times and using my fingers to trace the words, I framed it that evening and hung it over my desk so the morning light could touch it and serve as a silent, enduring reminder. I was never too much, invisible, or a burden. All along I was just who I needed to be. And I never had to bear their incapacity to see that. A few weeks later there was another email. This time less refined, more desperate. "You are missed. We had no intention of hurting you. Can we begin again?" Buried close at the end, the true cause appeared like a sliver beneath the skin. "Kindly request that Marina remove her post. Ethan is now struggling to find employment. His future is being impacted. Not regret or apology, just another deal, another debt they thought I would settle to keep the peace." I didn't respond. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Some doors once closed are supposed to stay that way. It's out of self-respect, not hatred. I was filing notes at my desk that evening when the letter from Marina was laid out in the sunlight. I closed my eyes, lay back, and felt entire for the first time in years. I stopped requesting permission to believe it, not because I was finally informed I mattered. I would love to know whether my tale struck a chord with you. Tell me what resonated with you, leave a comment, or just let me know you're seeing me. Perhaps by doing this, we let others know they're not alone. Please know this if you've ever felt ignored, or as though you had to earn someone's love by being silent or making sacrifices. You are free to occupy space. You have the right to refuse. Additionally, you are free to create a life free of those who only show up when it suits them. We should begin prioritizing peace over performance.